Look at this ravishing 18th century Scottish woman who went from an ill-reputed seductress to a courtesan and then finally became a spy. Nicknamed Dally the Tall by her peers, she was known for her fashionable appearance and scandalous love life. To be fair, having multiple relationships in the 18th century amounted to a scandalous love life. But even then, there's far more to this picture than meets the eye, quite literally. Before we dive in, if you like our content, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. As a painting, Mrs. Grace Dalrymple Elliott. This one is a fairly modest affair. Born in Scotland around 1754, she was the youngest of 4 siblings. Her parents divorced around the time of her birth. She was sent to a French convent where she learned the language and the ways of high society. But little did her parents know that her innocent little French visit foreshadowed her role in the French Revolution. When she returned to Edinburgh, her beauty and wits made an impression on John Elliott, a wealthy physician. She was 17 years of age, and he was twice her age, but it made little difference to him. It was a nice proposal, and despite the gossip surrounding the age gap, the two tied the knot. The gossip circles closely followed their every move, scrutinizing. They were growing apart in their private lives and soon began seeing other people. Grace had a brief affair with the Prince of Wales, who later became King George IV. The painting we see here is believed to have been commissioned by the prince around 1782. Notice how bold yet graceful she looks, intently looking back at us. The oval background of the portrait mirrors the shape of her face. Tied below her face is a ribbon that leads our eyes to her low-cut dress and her oval-shaped jewel pendant. The artist maintains his focus, and in doing so, our focus on her face, which is rendered in classical style with striking fidelity. But as we move down the frame, we increasingly notice loose brushstrokes, bringing some much-needed sensuality to her person. Gainsborough painted her once before in 1778 in a more traditional manner. Both paintings were exhibited at the Royal Academy of London. The first was well received, but the second, with its assertive gaze and notorious subject, caused a stir. Not the nice kind. When the London Morning Post referred to her as the beautiful Mrs. E, everyone knew who the paper was talking about. Elliott had already filed for divorce and hired a private investigator to gather evidence of his wife's infidelity. Meanwhile, Grace gave birth to a child, and Elliott claimed that the prince was the father. The prince acknowledged the child, but when she was shown to him, he laughed it off. To convince me that this is my girl, they must first prove that black is white. There were a few other candidates for the father: George Selwyn, an MP, Charles William Wyndham, a politician, and Lord Cholmondeley, whom we'll discuss in a moment. Using the detective's evidence, Elliott won the case and received £12,000 in damages. Grace's reputation was in tatters, and people started saying that she was too charming to not get herself gossiped about. She decided to leverage her physical attributes to become a demi-monde and move in higher circles. Now, for those of you who don't know what a demi-monde is, it's basically a person in high standing who engages in the pleasure-seeking cycle of nightlife, a courtesan, if you will. The debauchery and promiscuity of the demi-monde lifestyle lay in stark contrast to the holy sanctity of marriage. So, Grace quickly developed a notorious repute for her seductive ways. You might remember that she was the youngest of 4 siblings, so one of her older brothers did what older brothers used to do in the 18th century. He sent her to a French convent. Her second stint was not as peaceful as her first. She somehow met an old acquaintance, the Earl of Cholmondeley, within the first few weeks and charmed her way back to England. Their collab continued for a long time, and Mr. Cholomolo, with a lot of money, helped her out for many years. By 1786, she was back in Paris and had developed a reputation as a mistress of the French Duke of Orleans. The Prince of Wales had introduced the two a few years back. The Duke granted her a permanent residence, from where she witnessed the revolution up close. A little too close. The Jacobin Duke was one of the wealthiest men in the country and a staunch supporter of the revolution. He used his political weight to actively oppose the absolute monarchy. However, Grace's intentions were conflicted. She moved in royal circles and lacked the larger ideological motivations of her peers. She favored the people she knew and went to extreme lengths to help them out. It just so happened that these people were mostly royals. She also trafficked correspondence between her friends in Paris and exiled members of the royal court. She quickly earned a reputation in her district for her royalist sympathies. When the revolutionary government was weeding out the royals, she used her apartment as a base for hiding them. Given her notoriety, her apartment was consistently searched. A month before the September massacres of 1792, she hid the injured governor of Tuileries Palace, Marquis de Champcenetz, in her apartment. When the apartment was searched, he was nowhere to be found. But how? Was there a secret chamber? No. Underground tunnel? Wrong again. It was nothing elaborate. She hid him inside her mattress and laid down pretending to be ill. Sometimes the most devious plans are the simplest. And did I mention that she had carried the injured man back to her building and then arranged safe passage out of the country? She also provided a safe haven to a woman and her children who wanted to leave for Britain. Why the soft corner for these individuals, you ask? Get ready for this, ladies and gentlemen. She was a spy working for the British. She also arranged false documents for several people trying to leave the country. When the September massacres rolled around and heads started to fall, she witnessed some of the most violent and disturbing scenes anyone could see. One of these, watching the body of her friend Princess de Lamballe being dragged across the street, was particularly harrowing. 1792 and 1793 saw the entire country turn upside down. What started with the storming of the Bastille was reaching its gory climax. The Duke of Orleans was guillotined, and Madame du Barry, the mistress of King Louis XV and Grace's friend, met the same fate. The spy courtesan also knew Marie Antoinette, and we know what happened there. As the Reign of Terror instilled fear in hearts, dropping people left and right, she found herself in prison, awaiting her trial. She moved from jail to jail and was likely to be executed. However, as the terror came to a close, she was able to escape death and get off scot-free. She wrote one of the major English works about the French Revolution, titled Journal of My Life During the French Revolution. Historians agree that the work has its fair share of contradictions, but that is to be expected since it is an account of personal experience and subjective observations. She spent her later life lavishly and, if rumors are to be believed, was approached by Napoleon with a marriage offer, which she refused. Grace Elliott remains a controversial and fascinating figure. From convents to palaces, from seductress to spy, she led a life of extremes. Coveted by royal men for her impeccable beauty, she knew how to employ wit and charm to get her way. She passed away in 1823 at Ville d'Avray, leaving behind a difficult legacy. Due to her unique life story, she was the intrigue of artists. A film about her life was even released in 2001 called The Lady and the Duke. As for the painter who painted these, Thomas Gainsborough earned a reputation for being one of the most technically proficient and, at the same time, most experimental artists of his time. Hope you liked the story of this bold and mysterious woman. If we missed anything about this painting or its subject, do let us know in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one.